Ever feel like, you should just get those noise-canceling headphones, like, glued to your head at work?
Huh. I know that feeling.
Seriously, workplace conflict, it's like that office birthday cake. You know it's coming, you just hope it doesn't end in a sugar crash. But you've given us these 5 tips, and they're really about making these situations better.
Yeah, and more importantly, I think understanding what's going on beneath the surface. Because it's not just about quieting things down, it's about understanding why they flare up in the first place.
Okay, so tip number 1, stay calm. I mean, just saying it kind of makes you want to take a deep breath, right? But how do you actually do that when you're about ready to, lose it?
Well, think about it this way. Your brain, when it senses conflict, it kind of like reverts back to its caveman days.
Oh, so it's like fight or flight, right?
Yeah, exactly. Every disagreement suddenly feels like a life or death struggle. And all those stress hormones, they kick in and suddenly you're not thinking straight, you're just reacting.
So it's like our brain hits the panic button and we forget how to be, well, civilized.
Exactly. So the key is to hit the pause button on that panic mode. And the easiest way, breathe.
Okay, I can do that. Take a breath.
Right, those deep breaths. They literally give your brain a chance to catch up, to realize there's no saber-toothed tiger about to pounce.
I can already feel my blood pressure going down. But the breathing's just the first step, right? Because then there's the whole, like, what they're saying part, which I guess is where this whole active listening thing comes in. But how's that different from just, waiting for your turn to talk?
Because it's about really hearing them, not just their words, but the emotions behind them. You're sending the message that what they're saying matters.
It's like you're building trust, right? Showing them you're actually trying to get where they're coming from.
Exactly. It doesn't mean you agree, but it does mean you're creating a space for a real conversation, not just two people talking past each other.
So less like a tennis match, more like, I don't know, a dialogue.
More like building a bridge, I'd say.
Ooh, I like that. Okay, so bridge building in progress. That leads us to focus on the issue, not the person, which, again, sounds simple enough, but in reality, way easier said than done, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's human nature to make it personal, especially when emotions are running high. But if you want to solve the problem, you got to separate the behavior from the person.
So how do you actually do that? Like, what's the magic phrase to stop yourself from, going down that rabbit hole?
Sometimes it's as simple as saying, I understand you're feeling frustrated and I am too. But right now, let's focus on finding a solution too, and then clearly state the problem.
It's like you're putting on your project manager hat. Shifting from blame to brainstorming.
Precisely. And it helps to remind everyone, including yourself, what the real goal is.
Which, speaking of goals, brings us to tip number 4. Finding that common ground, which can feel about as likely as, I don't know, finding a parking spot right in front of the office. How do we even start looking for that when it feels like everyone's coming from totally different planets?
It's about shifting the mindset from me versus you to we.
So less about winning or losing and more about,
Collaborating, finding a solution that works for everyone involved, and it often leads to much more creative and ultimately effective outcomes.
because 2 heads are better than 1, especially when they're not trying to, like, butt heads.
Exactly.
Okay, but let's be real. What about those situations where you're, like, staring into the abyss and there's just no common ground to be found? What then?
That's when you have to dig a little deeper. Ask why until you understand the underlying needs and interests driving each person's position. It might take some time and some serious listening, but often there's a point of agreement hiding somewhere beneath the surface.
So even in the most extreme cases, there's hope.
There's always hope. Sometimes it's just a matter of finding the right perspective.
Okay, I like those odds. All right, final tip. And this one's a biggie because it's the one we often forget in the heat of the moment. Follow up. Now, why is that so important? Isn't the conflict over once everyone agrees to, like, stop disagreeing?
Think of it like planting a garden. You don't just stick the seeds in the ground and walk away hoping for the best. You've got to water them, weed them, give them a little TLC to make sure they thrive. Conflict resolution is kind of the same way. Following up, checking in, reaffirming the agreement, just seeing how things are going, it shows you're invested in making things work long term.
So it's about making sure everyone feels heard and understood, even after the initial, I don't know, storm has passed.
Exactly. It's about turning that temporary ceasefire into a lasting peace treaty.
That is a truly fantastic analogy. We've covered a lot of ground here. If our listeners could take away just one golden nugget of wisdom from this deep dive, what would you want it to be?
Self-awareness. Pay attention to your own reactions, your communication patterns. That's where real growth and effectiveness begin.
So the most important conversation we can have about conflict is actually with ourselves.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Once you understand your own triggers and tendencies, you can start to navigate those challenging situations with more empathy, more understanding, and ultimately more success.
Food for thought. All right, everyone, go forth and self-reflect. We'll see you in the next deep dive.